Yo, what it is, everybody? Thanks for tuning back into another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Well, y'all love my Gsxr 1000 so much, right? You know, y'all love. Nah, I'm just kidding. We all know this is the 1000 over here, but tried to get you. Y'all love my 1000 so much, so I figured I'd give y'all a good update and tell you some information that actually worked for me. Don't know if it works for all of them, but I had some suspicion and some doubt specifically with this and this issue, but many other individuals have had this issue with their early 2017 Gsxr 1000s of obviously this new generation. So first and foremost, let's start off by I finally hit over 5,000 miles on this Joker, and I wanted to let you know all of the issues with him. Well, the answer is none. This bike is no Ducati, and it doesn't go into the shop. And that's exactly why the Japanese bikes are king. I don't care even as much shit as I talk about the Yamahas. Still a better bike than Ducati. But anyway, long story short, no real major issues or anything with this. The two issues that I say that I really did have, both of them were actually recalls by Suzuki. So they've obviously meant to make them right. One was when a bike, right when when they came out, they said some O-ring in the fuel tank or whatever could potentially leak. It's not mandatory right away that you come get it, but once you go in for service, they'll obviously do it. And then I mentioned this before, specifically on my bike, but many others as well, was sometimes when you start the bike, the ABS module won't fully engage with the wheel speed sensor up front. So the way around it is to, while the bike is in motion, you cut it off and then cut it back on. That will get the ABS module to go in. So there was a recall actually on that, but when I started to look at the bike, and this is kind of why I wanted to go into it, I never took my bike in to actually get serviced or anything like that. I never had it taken back to the dealer since I bought it in any Suzuki dealer. Anytime it's been serviced, oil or anything like that, any maintenance, brakes, it's all been done by me. The only other person that has touched this bike is my tuner, and obviously that's to, make changes inside of the ECU and stuff like that. But other than that, everything has been done by me. Same with this bike, but that's pretty normal for what I've always kind of had with the Suzukis. So, but as I was riding, and ever since I got the bike, a couple years ago, even when the bike was bone stock, I noticed that when you start the bike, because it doesn't have the same type of switch like how the older Suzukis have, where you engage it and you push the switch and it just, directly kicks the starter. It's moved to that newer style where it knows when the bike is engaged, kind of like a push button start, and it obviously has a computer and a solenoid and stuff like that. So when you tap it and go, the bike itself will decide to actually start up and go once it sees all of the correct inputs and parameters directly from the computer. So I knew there was a lot more electronics in this bike and stuff like that, obviously with the evolution and things like that. But as it would start, at first I thought maybe, they changed the starter was weak, this, that, whatever. So I started to monitor the battery voltage and also decided to take my meter and also check the battery amperage. Amperage fell within spec, but voltage to me always seemed really low, almost like it had a dead cell. When the bike was on, the stator and everything would keep the bike fully charged, but when every time it would try and start, it would really sometimes have a hard time starting. And I'm like, oh, well, the battery's brand new, the bike is brand new, it's just how the bike is. So then after a couple times I went back and forth, and you start the bike back to back 3 or 4 times, and then it would have a really, really hard time starting. So I'm like, well, this is not right. And even though it's a really small battery, only, like 190 cold cranking amps, I should be able to start this thing more than 2 or 3 times. So then one time it died. and I couldn't get it to start. And I'm like, well, everything else powered up, but the second I would try and trip that circuit, it wouldn't start. So I went ahead and jumped the bike turned right on. First thing to believe is that the battery's taking a shit. So I drove the bike for a little longer and this, that, whatever, and it didn't happen for like another year. Did so again after that. Then put my meters on it, checked the voltage, then checked the amperage. Amperage was still pretty close to within spec, but just about where the battery was rated. And then the voltage still, every time you fully charge the battery, then you take it off the tender and stuff like that, fully charged battery would have 11.8, 11.9 volts. I'm like, no, absolutely not. This battery's shit. It needs to be replaced. So you all saw I put another battery in this bike. No big deal. But I put a battery rather than it reading 12.6 volts and fully charged. I believe it reads 13 volts. So it was just a little bit of boost, no big deal. And the first thing I noticed, because of all the electronics, and if you know anything about diagnosing electronics, low voltage will cause them all to just frickin' wig out. If they have low voltage during cranking, they're supposed to see a certain amount of voltage, and the amperage obviously will take care of it from the draw and obviously from your alternator or from your stator here on your motorcycle. So it led me to believe from a while back, I'm like, maybe because this thing has low voltage sometimes, it's causing some of the other computers to wig out. But the bike still worked and I really wasn't caring, so I was just kind of like had my work run, so I really didn't care. So and once the time came, I threw a battery in this thing, and sure enough, it started like 1,000 times faster, like almost like if it was always on the jump box. Killed it, started it, killed it, started, killed it, started, killed it. Same thing. Everything was working perfectly fine. So then I decided to go out and then go back and ride it around. And guess what? I've probably ridden this thing a few hundred miles, started and stopped this thing. I couldn't tell you how many times. And every single time I've never had to reset the ABS mods or anything like that. So I don't know if this is a permanent fix or anything like that, but for any of my fellow friends out there that follow me for Gsxr content and that have the newer version of this motorcycle, you may want to check your battery. The factory Gsxr batteries that come in this thing, which a lot of manufacturers use them, Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, Kawi, you know, even the one in my Grom took a shit. I just always found them to be just a piece of shit battery, to be wholehearted and honest. They just never held up. The only one, the factory battery that really held up for a long time was the one in my BMW, but that wasn't the Gsxr battery. So everything else on the bike has been flawless, but it is nice that that issue has been fixed. Nothing here to say that it can't not come back, but I think that if it was going to come back, it would have came back, you know, a few times, or maybe it would have just wigged out and just got it right once and then maybe came back, but absolutely not. It's working flawlessly. It's fine. The bike obviously seems to run happier now that it has a little bit extra voltage, which you can, and which is normal with any electrical, you know, circuit that, you know, needs to have the appropriate amount of voltage. But it's also just not voltage. You also have to factor in amperage. And I think that having the battery also having a little bit of extra voltage in it, you know, puts a little bit less strain on the other components. But you can't go too high. You can't go 14, 15 volts because, you know, you'll fry out the electronics. They're designed to operate in a certain range, and they're designed to stay within that range. You cook them too low, they have to work too hard. You cook them too hot, they're trying to go into protection, and it's the same difference just on the other side of the wagon. So you got to make sure that they stay within, and usually I can bump it up just a tad bit, and they stay pretty happy, and then the stator and the factory charging system on the bike will take care of that, and also keep your rectifier and stuff cool as well. Won't usually get as hot as quick when it has to charge and do everything. So I wanted to share that story with you. Overall, still no issues with the bike, absolutely none. I've changed the oil on it a few times, you know, held this joke. I did increase my rev limiter by 500, held it, you know, at what was it, 14,000, you know, at 800 RPM for like, you know, 30 seconds straight. Of course, drained it, made sure that there's no crazy metal shavings, stuff like that. You know, I'm not chewing up my clutches. I love to do clutch wheelies in 3rd and 4th gear to see how they're holding up. Not a whole lot of clutch dust inside of the oil on them pans or anything like that. I mean, factory Suzuki clutches, they're pretty damn good. Even in drag racing, you have to change them, but I pretty much always use stock steels and fibers. They've always done best, even opposed to the aftermarkets. Quick shifter is fine for the individuals that have ever asked me about my quick shifter. Does it mess up or this, that, whatever? Mine doesn't, but my bike is fully tuned. I can't tell you if it would, if it wasn't. I didn't have it more than probably a couple 100 miles on the factory tune, so I don't know. And everything else has been flawless. I can't say anything really bad about it, except, you know, the factory tires just suck, but I got rid of those right away. But that's on any Suzuki. So chain is good, not crazy loose or anything. I do like to leave my stock pitch. Allows me to beat on the chain a little bit more. You can say what you want about converting to a 520, but I'm going to keep my 530. And everything else is perfectly fine. I have no absolute complaints really about anything. There's been no absolute issues with the bike. Those 2 recalls, when that's directly from Suzuki, and I never got either one of them fixed. And one fixed itself by putting in a battery to supply the motorcycle with the correct voltage. So one day, maybe if I'm bored at a dealer or something like that, I'll let them take it in and they can do the O-ring and stuff like that. But I'm kind of a really firm believer on shit that's really not that big of a deal. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If it was something big like, hey, your oil cooler is prone to cracking and leaking and stuff like that, I'm gonna go ahead and take that in and let that get fixed. There's a potential O-ring that may leak, but never has, and I've monitored it very closely. I'm not saying that I'm never going to, but it's not my top priority right now at the moment. But you best believe if I ever smell fuel or see my fuel leaking or anything like that, I will. But also, if anyone that had theirs fixed, let me know if they've had theirs and if there was an issue that they ever had or anything else. So that's my 5,000 mile update. The thing is a beast. It is my favorite bike. It is. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely far surpassed my BMW, my 2015. That used to be my favorite bike until I got this, and it is my favorite bike. Well, this one and this one. I prefer to ride my 600 more on the street. It is a lot more docile and forgiving than the 1000, but the Suzuki is still my most favorite bike, and the 2020 S1000 that I had as well. I did not like it. I thought it was shit. So that's going to wrap it up here for today's video. I hope you guys like what you saw. Facebook, Instagram, @TheSpeedBug. Same name here as YouTube. We'll see you for some more content here on the Speedbug channel. Peace out.